Hello, my name is Mark Leslie, and welcome to a very special evening of a horror reading with none other than Nancy Kilpatrick. Now, today is Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. Tomorrow, February 17th, is I Read Canadian Day. And before I introduce Nancy, I want to say very, very special Canadian whose books I've read. This is the very first book I have ever gotten signed by an author, Canadian author Nancy Kilpatrick. And look at this. I got this signed in Ottawa at, I'm trying to remember the name of Saint Laurent Mall. And then I got my nice signature from Nancy Kilpatrick. Now, I was introduced to Nancy as a writer of vampiric fiction. But Nancy, you are here today to treat us with a different kind of story. What are you going to treat us with tonight?
Well, this 5-minute story that I'm going to read is called Memories of El Dia de los Muertos, which is Day of the Dead.
Cool.
Okay.
Oh, Day of the Dead. Awesome.
Take it away. Put on some
All right, I'm going to drop
glasses.
off and let you take it away.
Okay. Okay, so Memories of El Dia de los Muertos. You call me Deathbringer, as though ancient words can wound me. When I was mortal, as you are still, that name filled me with loathing. Now, because I live forever, because I have seen your grandparents rot, and will watch Los Gusanos devour your children, your words fade like the ghosts of memories. This eve of the Day of the Dead, my day, although you do not yet realize there are many ways to be dead, I watch you enter El Cementerio just after sunset. The crude wooden crosses, as well as those of fine marble, are draped with fragrant bougainvillea, gardenia, and you add marigolds, the flowers of the dead, to the stones you stop beside. I see your wife spread a colorful blanket over the graves of your ancestors and open jars and boxes for the long night of sharing, a night when the dead will consume the spirit of the food you offer, food you expect to eat. Your son and 2 daughters pulse with life I no longer possess. They skip along the dusty paths, eating sugar skulls and clutching papier-mâché skeletons until the sky blackens and the few fires scattered throughout the graveyard become the only light under a moonless sky. The children fall silent and huddle near you, fearful, expectant. You tell them a story of how the dead on this day return to converse with the living, to fulfill promises and offer guidance, to bring good fortune. As you strum your guitar and sing a song, your eyes are sad and fearful. Years have passed since you have visited the dead. Few still come here to spend the night. By the flickering embers, you stare at the worn oval photograph of your mother and imagine her returning. You want this, yet fear it, to speak with her again, to feel her bless you and the ones you love. Your son and daughters have fallen asleep. Your wife is drowsy. She leans back and closes her eyes, her long dark hair and the crucifix she wears falling away from her throat. You are alone. Outside the cemetery walls, mariachis have stopped playing. A cool wind caresses you, blowing hair up the back of your head, exposing your neck. You shiver. I laugh, and you turn abruptly at the sound. Familiar, alien, darkness presses in on you, and the dead beneath you struggle to call a warning, but their voices were silenced long ago by the worms. You look again to the picture of your mother, then to the sky, and cross yourself, sensing she can no longer help you. Something flies through the night air, beyond the illumination of the fire. A bat, you hope. Wings flap, and you listen as though to a voice. The tequila bottle is less than half full. You take another swallow, and I can see you are wondering how you will endure this night. Once, long ago, when your ancestors and I walked in daylight together, I sat where you sit now, honoring the dead, singing sad and joyous songs to them, telling their tales of grief and bitterness, and of how they loved, of how they lived and died. Memories stir in me like petals rustled by a breeze. At last you see me, a shadow among shadows. The guitar slips from your hands. I have come for you. Your eyes are red rimmed with the knowledge. You plead, your wife, you say, and your children. There are things you have not yet done. You beg me to spare you until morning, imagining I do not know my powers will wane with the sun. I laugh as tears spill down your weathered face. I am incapable of pity. When I reach out to stroke your cheek, to feel the warmth pushing against your flesh, salty wetness coats my dead fingers. Astonished, I remember. On a day of the dead such as this, when I sat where you sit now, my loved ones beside me, music floating on the cool breezes drifting down from the mountains, I too wept. My vulnerable tears betrayed me then, as yours betray you now. My tears did not save me. What warms your body will soon warm mine. I nod at the boy child, the youngest, a substitute. You decline, as I knew you must. I do not see this as heroism or bravery, simply what you would do. You turn to the picture of your mother. She will intercede, you think. You pray to her, to anyone. A small iguana springs onto the tombstone next to the melting candle you have placed there. She pauses and stares at you. She is a sign, you believe, good or ill. How can you be certain? I step into the firelight. Neither the dead nor the living can help you now. Why, you ask me? This question I have heard many times over the years, many times. It is a question for which there is no answer. Your life does not mean to me what it means to you. I feel no love or sympathy, no pity. I no longer understand remorse. All I can tell you is that I long for your hot blood to swirl through my cold body. Your eyes are the only reflection I am capable of seeing, and in them I find myself as I once was, but am no longer. This image cannot sway me. What I need, I must have. You suddenly understand a horror that all your life you have avoided. You find this incomprehensible. Dead exist to whom you mean nothing. And yet even you must know that blood is all that matters on this day when Los Muertos are honored. Across the graveyard, another calls his ghosts, and I listen, intrigued by the bittersweet song. The night is long, there are many here with offerings, many. To one such as myself, all are equal. Before I turn away, I glimpse disbelief in your eyes, gratitude. You cross yourself and fall on your knees before your mother, before me. I drift between the worn stone toward new worn. You are a memory, already fading, a memory that will die, a memory of the dead. That's that.
That that was awesome. Thank you so much. I have to ask a couple questions if that's okay. The
Sure.
very atmospheric. What First of all, what inspired this story?
This story came from a dream, and as you would know, Mark, and most writers will know, we dream, and when we dream, we often have a character in the dream, or it could be a place, or it could be something like a house or a chair. It could be a scent, an aroma, anything in a dream, and it somehow resonates, and we take it and we run with it and turn it into a story in some way. This story came to me full blown. I woke up, there was the story. I got onto the computer immediately and wrote it. And I think I've changed over the years, maybe 4 words. So this is exactly what came out of me that day. Now, I didn't think I knew anything about Day of the Dead. I still don't think I knew anything, but it's certainly conceivable that I read something prior to this, or I saw something in television or a movie or whatever. Day of the Dead was not very well known at that time, certainly not up in Canada. Maybe if you lived in a border state in the US, you were familiar with it because you went to Mexico a lot. But for the rest of us, this was not normal thing to know about. So yeah, I didn't know what I wrote. I had no clue what this is about, and eventually it got published in. I had the dream in the late '80s. It got published in, I think it was 1992 or 1993, Dead of Night magazine #8. And then more recently, it was published by Steve Jones in the Mammoth Book of Halloween in 2018. And then there's been around between those times. So yeah, that's the
Right.
origin of it.
Cool. Well, I have to share some comments from folks. So Anne says
Okay.
that was lovely,
Oh, thank you,
and
Anne.
also wow, which I think was a reference to it coming from your dream completely.
Oh, okay.
Caro says great atmosphere. Again, I
Thank you,
concur.
Carol.
And Jane says, "Wow, very powerful." And then had asked, you'd already answered, where has this story appeared? So that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
But have
I,
you?
I
This came in a dream, right?
yeah.
Have you? Had you been? Had you visited Day of the Dead before the dream, or did it come to you before
No,
you?
no. I've been to Mexico several times. More of the touristy kind of places, Cancun,
Right.
Puerto Vallarta kind of thing. But in 1999, with my then partner, we went to Mexico specifically for the Day of the Dead, which is held on 2 days. It's November 1 and 2. And we went there a couple of days before the first, and we were in Mexico City. And I was thinking this would be a great big, event there because it's like millions and millions of people. And so we were suggested to go to two different cemeteries. So we went to both of them. Absolutely nothing was happening in the cemeteries, nothing at all. And I was startled by this. And I thought, I guess I had the wrong idea because, I read about Day of the Dead over the years, and there's nothing happening. Why? Somebody said, go to Oaxaca. So we took a flight over the mountains and we went to Oaxaca, which is it's called a city, but I would call it a town, probably. It's very small. And that's where everything was happening. And I guess in smaller regions of Mexico, this is where they really were big on celebrating the Day of the Dead. So we got there, and right away we started seeing everything. The street had sand paintings, colored sand, and they were huge sand paintings that would be the length of a storefront or even more. We went to the city hall. They had an altar display. Altars are normally made in the homes, and they're meant to honor the person who's died in the family and also to invite their spirit to return and mingle with the living. So we saw beautiful altars, and they have all kinds of things, flowers and food and incense and pictures and little figures, little Day of the Dead figures, of which I ended up collecting over the years because I'm me. So I'll just show some of them so people know what I'm talking about. This is one. This is a skeleton in a coffin, right? A little skeleton in a coffin. It's got
Okay.
a string, and you pull it, and the skeleton comes out. Because
Awesome.
there's a lot of humor with Day of the Dead too. This is a woman and her baby, and this would have been on an altar of a woman
Oh,
who died and her young child.
right.
This is a man. This would be on an altar, a man who liked to read because anything that represented what the person was like. He's reading a newspaper. I think it's a
Okay.
newspaper. So basically, maybe I'll put it somewhere else where it's better to be seen. Yeah, there's often couples, married couples like this couple here. They're in a little cart, and there's a big thing about couples, wedding couples. Um, this is not from Mexico. This one I got in San Antonio, Texas. They have a huge Mexican market. This is the Saint Marta. This is a something you put on an altar because it's got seeds and leaves and things like that. And so she's one of those saints that you can ask for things like because of who she is, you can ask her for good things, for blessings, for this and that, and things you want, love, whatever. But you can also ask her for things like revenge on somebody. So she's kind of multi-purpose, you know. And this one is also not from Mexico, but I loved it, so I bought it. And it's from Florida, someone there who is Mexican who made these. I thought this was the most beautiful that I've seen, so I
Oh,
bought that.
that's
I
lovely.
bought
Yeah.
one for myself and one for a friend. They're so beautiful. So those things were in Oaxaca. And we wanted to go to the cemetery, of course. So we went to a small cemetery in the city, and there it was just full of people. They were washing the graves and whitewashing them, and cooking food and eating it. And the kids were eating sugar skulls, running around. The mariachis were playing for coins, and it was just a very very nice experience to be there. People were sleeping, people were chatting, people were praying. It was all this going on, being very respectful, of course, of people and their customs, and we're outsiders. So I didn't really see at the time any tourists, but I think it probably now Oaxaca is a big tourist place for Day of the Dead. And in the evening, we went to the large, what they call a municipal cemetery, which was supposedly in the suburbs, but the word suburb doesn't mean the same thing when you're talking about a small place. So we rented a car thinking, oh, we hope we can get behind this place. And as soon as we got out of the downtown, which I'd call the downtown area, the core of this town, there were cars everywhere. It was like rush hour, and it was dark out, and we're driving along this road with all these other cars, and on the side, people had set up. I guess you'd call them. Parking lots, there was empty land, and so people were parking their
Right.
cars and paying, a peso or two to park there. And so we got as far as we could get to, and then we parked our car, walked the rest of the way. And as we're walking towards the cemetery with all these other people, up ahead, there's this light in the sky, and I'm thinking to myself, what in the world could that be? Because yes, there are candles, but this is an enormous light. Well, when we got there, we found out it was a big carnival right outside the cemetery gates, a giant carnival. There was a big Ferris wheel, neon everywhere, and people selling everything imaginable. Lots of food being cooked, incense, flowers, everything was for sale. Carpets for your living room, all of it. So we walked through this carnival and got into the cemetery where it was very dark and it was very peaceful. And someone gave us right away a piece of paper that wasn't sure what it was. Might have been cemetery rules, but we discovered later it was a poem about dead people. So that was really a beautiful cemetery because it was night and because all the graves had already been fixed up, like the ones that we saw in the daytime. And the people were pretty much gone. There were very few people in the cemetery with us. It's a very large cemetery, but wandering around, many of the graves were lit with candles, and it was just so beautiful to have the flowers, the marigolds, which are the flowers of the dead, and the incense, copal incense, which comes from a tree. It's a lovely smell. That was all happening, and the pictures of the people that had died, maybe the little figures, anything like that. So it was an amazing experience, and it brought a reality to the story that had come to me way back when, in some way, who knows why. I felt honored to be there in Mexico to see all this, also honored to write the story. So there you go. It's another one of those mysteries of which there are many.
Well, thank you. Sephora said, great reading. And the question came in. I think we have time for a question from Jane. And Jane asked, because this came in a dream, have you tried self-hypnosis to induce a dream state?
No, I used to do a lot more work on dreams when I was younger. I would keep a notebook by the bed, and I would sometimes think about things like I would like to have a dream about, or a positive dream. I haven't done that though. I've had, I think there's maybe three stories that have come to me in dreams like this, but this was the most powerful of the three. But there are
Wow.
two others. I hope to read at some point one of the others. And yeah, yeah. So no, I haven't done that. I just try to, stay asleep when I'm asleep and awake when I'm awake, which is certainly a lot harder in the pandemic. I never want to wake up in the mornings, and I can't go to sleep at night. So
Excellent. Well,
yes.
I'm looking forward to the next reading. Maybe it's
Oh,
one of the
thank
other
you,
dream
Mark.
stories. So great.
I
And
just wanted to point.
go ahead.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I just wanted to point out this is also Women in Horror Month, February, at least for this year. Might change to March next year. I don't know. There's a lot of controversy about it. But anyway, it is Women in Horror Month. And I'd also like to mention that this reading has come about through the Canada Council for the Arts, which has a reading program. I think Mark is going to do one as well. And that is through the auspices of the Writers Union of Canada, of which I'm a member. Mark is also. And so I'd also like to thank Mark, because he is the grounding for this, for me, Airhead. And Mark does all of the tech, but he's also very kind and generous with his time and his energy. So I wouldn't be able to do this without him. That's absolutely true. So thank you, Mark, for everything. And thank you, anyone who's come to this, who's heard my story. And I appreciate you taking the time and energy to hear me read this. And I hope you enjoyed yourself and are definitely staying safe. I'm sure you are.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Nancy, and good night to everyone.
Bye.